People who have taken an ancestry DNA test and accidentally uncovered a family secret. What was it? A full 100% older brother. My mother got pregnant by my father before they were married. Scandalous in the 60s. So with my father's knowledge of the situation, Mom left town and lived with my aunt until the birth. Mom gave the baby up for adoption and then returned home. A couple years later, she married my dad and had 3 more children together, including me. 55 years later, after both my parents had died, my aunt let it slip that me and my siblings were not the only children of our parents. To paraphrase from Star Wars, there is another. My sister took a DNA test, and a couple of years later, she got a hit. Soon thereafter, we met our new big brother and his family, wife and kids, and have become quite close. Story 2. My male cousin did one and found a female cousin we didn't know about. He reached out to her and apparently our deceased uncle was good friends with her mother. Mom wanted a baby, so uncle got her pregnant simply as a donor. Female cousin lived a few blocks away from my grandmother. She had met her a few times going around selling Girl Scout cookies or something. My grandmother had no idea that she was buying cookies from her granddaughter. Story 3. Not me, but a friend never knew who his father was. Mom had a weekend fling in college and never contacted the guy after, and his wife helped him use ancestry.com to try and track him down. My friend reached out and the guy was obviously surprised, but flew across the country to meet him. They have a great relationship now. The dad attended his wedding, and they try to get their families together a couple times a year or so. What an insane shock that must have been for the guy, though. Like, I'm sure he didn't even know he got her pregnant. Admittedly, I'm sure he thought that it was a possibility, because if you're, doing action that could create a baby, you kind of have to expect it's a possibility. But dude heard nothing, so I just assumed that he was like, oh, that worked out well. And then what, like 22 whatever years later, he's like, excuse me? Son? Story 4. I was adopted and always knew I was adopted. My parents told me that I came from a family that already had all of their kids. They lived several towns over. I was a surprise. 3 years later, my wife decided to take some DNA tests. I figured, what the heck? Maybe I'm part Zulu warrior, that'd be cool. When the tests came back, I found out I had a first cousin. They had listed a public email. I emailed them, started comparing notes, and wham, I was in for quite a surprise. First, I was not born into a traditional family. Instead, my biological mother was single. Second, I was not a late addition. I had 4 sisters and 1 brother. I was the baby, but only by a couple of years. Third, most all of them lived nearby. Finally, nobody knew I was alive. My biological mom had passed. She kept the pregnancy secret from everybody else. Before she died, she had confided in one of my biological sisters that she had a baby a long time ago, and she had put the baby up for adoption. She told no one else. When my sister told the rest of the family, they didn't believe her. So when I finally looked them up, she was like, see, all those years ago, I told you so, we have a baby brother. It was an amazing experience. I had no idea what I was getting into when I sent off that DNA test. I wonder what it's like to just realize you had family near you all the time and just didn't know it. Like, you've probably met this person who you are related to by blood and you had no idea, just by chance. Also, how did the mother hide the pregnancy from everyone? Or did she just say that it didn't work out or something like that? I don't know. But I feel like she couldn't have hid it from all of her children for that long. Or maybe only the oldest one started asking about it. We don't have the ages. Story 5. Not me, my wife. A few years ago, my wife and I took the 23andMe test. One of her matches came back with 23%, which is high for someone non-family. She messaged him and they started talking. He was about 10 years older, said he was adopted, and the only thing he knew was some basic biological info. From his age, that would have put her mom at 14, but her mom never said anything about it. So the 2 options were her mom got knocked up young, or grandma had a secret love child. So she asked her youngest uncle, who said when he was a kid, he remembered his sister going away for a few months because she was sick, and the family just pretended it never happened. He also said that before his mom passed, she told him all about it. So my wife now has a brother, a sister-in-law, and nieces and nephews. The start of this really sounds like some kind of dating website or something. Just a short little bit that's like one of her matches came back with 23%. I don't know, my brain is probably just rotted from being around people who use Tinder all the time. I can't hear the word matches and not think of, Tinder matches. But when I got that idea in my head and the next sentence started with, she messaged him and started talking, I got kind of concerned. I know this is about ancestry tests, but I got worried. Story 6. So I did the health DNA one 18 months ago because I wanted to see if I had the breast cancer gene, as there are several incidences on both sides of my family. Got my results and became very confused. It claimed I had no Italian despite my father's grandma literally coming over from Sicily in 1920. It took me a few minutes to realize what that actually meant. My parents have been together since my mom was 14. I was born when she was 17, and my father joined the military and married my mother. Called my mom and she literally said, "That's interesting." Then she asked me to not talk to my father and she would explain everything the next time I visited. She did not and just refused to talk about it. Honestly, I was just shook. I did not see it coming and it was never even presented to be a possibility to me. My sister ended up doing a DNA test and it showed that we were half-siblings. I went no contact with my mother 4 months ago due to this incident and several others. I haven't told my dad, but I realize at some point the truth is going to come out. My sister matched with some of my father's relatives while I did not, so if anyone checks that, they're gonna be asking questions. Story 7. Found out that my brother is only my half-brother. Our parents, well, who we thought were both our parents, were never married. But my mom has insisted my whole life that my dad is my brother's dad. He never acknowledged my brother, he did me, claiming that the man my mom was living with at the time was probably his father. My mom has always said the other fellow was simply her roommate. Given that my dad was an alcoholic and chronic liar and our mom has never been someone to lie to make herself look better, and that my brother looked pretty much exactly like my dad in an old army photo, we believed our mom. So my brother gets an ancestry DNA test done and he's got no German at all. Even though our dad's side of the family is super German. But things happen, DNA comes out weird. Then I got a test done, and he showed up as a close match, but with 99% certainty, a half-sibling. So we dig into this a little more, and my half-sister from my dad's side's son shows up on mine, but not his. She's there too now, only on mine. All the cousins on my dad's side showed up on mine, but not his. The relatives we have in common are our mom's family. So we're left with the certainty that our mom has been wrong all these years. Again, I swear to you, this woman does not lie to make herself look better. It just doesn't occur to her. I mean, I was in elementary school when she told me I was the result of a drunken attempt to get her ex-boyfriend to leave his wife for her. This woman is really a lot more honest than she should be by all rights. So we've actually decided to not raise the issue with her. Either she's gone 50 years not knowing the actual father of her oldest child, or there's enough trauma there to make an unusually honest woman lie. This is just one more small bit of weirdness in our family anyway. My brother is legally my uncle. Story 8. That my grandmother was biracial. She was abandoned shortly after birth at a church by an older white lady. Adopted by a white farmer with 11 kids. Stopped talking to most of that family due to nondescript unpleasantness as an older teen. She died 20 years before I was born and looks like Maya Rudolph in the few photos I've seen, but insisted she was part Sicilian. My father and his brother look more white than not. My father worshipped the ground she walked on and never questioned her ancestry. My uncle was always pretty sure she was black, and argued with her a lot. Both dad and uncle ended up being super active in the civil rights movements and are still devoted to anti-racism work nearly 60 years on, which largely stemmed from these discussions growing up. Anyway, my mom, divorced from my dad, got me a DNA test a few years ago. My grandmother was definitely half black. I have no Sicilian or Italian DNA. I've connected with a few black distant cousins over email and Zoom. I'm waiting for the pandemic to mostly end to talk to my dad about it and introduce him to more family. Story 9. I took a DNA test and found I am ethnically 25% Ashkenazi. After 8 months of serious digging, I found out my grandpa, my father's dad, is not my father's biological father. I've since come into contact with my half-uncle. He's super nice and I enjoy chatting with him. I loved learning about my biological grandpa and the rest of the family. We haven't told them and don't plan on it. I have a small family, so it was such a great comfort to connect with more family, as well as understand my lineage and history of my Jewish ancestors. Really a lovely experience. Story 10. My wife no longer knows who her father is. We are about to approach her mom about this, but that's a delicate relationship balance to approach due to her mom being very straight-laced and proper. It's shaken my 45-year-old wife's entire foundation. She was from 6 generations of Texans. Now, she's lost. I don't know how to help her. She's not even really interested in finding out who her real father is yet. She is also relieved because the man she thought was her father is a weird jerk. I wish her dad, her mom's current husband of 40 years, was her real dad. Though he did legally adopt her years ago when the guy she thought was her dad abandoned her. It's a mess. Hard pass on the DNA tests for me. I'm good just being 90% screwed up. Story 11. My grandmother is the world's sweetest person and had a horrible, horrible woman as a mother. Her father, though, was incredible. She always talks about how much I remind her of him, the small and sweet things they did together, and how much she really misses him. Recently, she told me that her mother would tell her, "He isn't your real father, you know," whenever she felt like hurting my grandmother some more. This continued until the day she died, and her father escaped her mother's abuse, and never spoke to my grandmother again. My Nana doesn't blame him at all, and still loves him very much to this day. She decided to go onto Ancestry because she said that she needs to know before she dies, although she also said it wouldn't change anything about how she felt about him. Turns out her mother was right. My grandmother found her biological family and loves to talk about her French heritage that she's now learning about. To this day, she doesn't hold anything against her non-biological dad. He took care of my grandmother when her mother wouldn't, knowing it wasn't his child. He loved her, soothed her, and nurtured her as if she was his own, and he made sure she thought she was. He saved my grandmother's spirit, I'll tell you that much. He helped shape her into the most miraculous human being I've ever met. To this day, I will always refer to him as my great-grandfather, and if I have a son, I'll be naming him after him. This story always gets me teary-eyed, but the thought of Alistair, my Nana's pretend dad, always makes me really happy. I know it makes her happy too. Story 12. Not my story, but someone very close to me discovered that none of the ethnic background that they were expecting was present in the results. This person, whose father was deceased at the time, questioned their mother. The mother admitted that the person's father was not biological as they believed their entire life. They were older than 40. The mother gave the name of the actual biological father. My friend then found him. He contacted him and then discovered that they had several half-siblings. The biological father was unaware he had another child, and happily accepted my friend into his family, as did the siblings. I'm always kind of impressed when I hear about people hiding these things for their whole lives. Maybe I just can't keep a secret, but I would never be able to. The guilt alone would eat me up alive. I would have to tell them. I would feel so bad. But at the same time, I guess that they probably thought about telling them and decided that it's better not to. So, story 13. Not me, but a friend. My friend, 34F, decided to get her twin sister and parents a DNA testing kit for Christmas. When her parents opened the gift, they looked at each other and said, "Oh, thanks." They quickly tried to move on to other presents. My friend was slightly confused but dropped it. Later, they went for their Christmas Day walk. The mom and sister were walking ahead while she walked with her dad. Her dad spilled the beans. Her and her sister were adopted. The mother looked back and started crying. She couldn't believe her husband told her daughter without them talking about it first. They were going to keep it a secret forever. She had never suspected she or her sister were adopted because they look a lot like their parents. They are also very short, as are their parents. Whoops. I feel like at the age of 34, that's something you can take, though. I understand wanting to hide it for childhood because that could get some weird thoughts into a child's head and just cause problems. I get it. I don't agree, but I get it. But at 34, why hide it? This is something that they deserve to know, to be honest. Story 14. My husband and I did Ancestry DNA because I am very into genealogical research, and was hoping it would break down some roadblocks in my research. My husband gets a message from a guy that is a full cousin match. I manage both our tests on my account, so I was on my husband's to respond to this guy because I hate when people do not respond to me. He was slow with it, so I took over after his first response. It turned out the guy was searching for his biological father for more than 35 years, and matching with my husband was the closest he has ever been to an answer. I told him that I would help him find his father and to give me 2 days. I had to go through my husband's large family to narrow things down. Fortunately, there were a lot of cousins that had also done Ancestry DNA, so I was able to rule a few uncles out. I narrowed it down to 2 and felt it was the one that was married with his own children, and I had to approach it delicately. I spoke to his aunt and asked for wedding dates of her family so I could add it to my tree. I determined that the conception date was before their marriage, so I was somewhat clear in regards to that because they were on a break at that time. I eventually determined who the father was. I called his aunt and said I had to speak with her about something delicate. She's an awesome person and I knew she would understand, but my husband was freaking out and thought this would end their marriage. I knew it wouldn't. She, as predicted, was awesome about it and was ready to welcome her new stepson into her family. When we broke the news to his uncle, he did not remember the mother at all. It was back in the early 80s and he was in the Navy at the time, so he could have been out partying and that's how things happen. He was so upset because he never knew he had this son out there, because if he knew, he would have raised him. He was really sad about that. I gave him his son's phone number and now they talk all the time. A few years back, his son and his adoptive parents came to town. and we welcomed them to the family. His adoptive mother hugged me and thanked me. She cried and told me that he really needed this, because his biological mom had told him several possible men over the years, and when he reached out to those men, they rejected him and hurt him even more. It was a really nice moment with a happy ending. I say that the universe sends these people to me. The morning after I solved that mystery, I got a message from a guy that was a cousin match to me. He said he had been searching for his biological parents since he found out he was adopted after his parents passed, and he was clearing out their papers more than 20 years ago. I said, of course I will help you, but I'm a student and can only do this research on my school breaks. Well, after lots of research and a few adoption research seminars, I solved that mystery. He now has a relationship with his nieces and nephews, and it makes me smile. I was also able to give him the family health history that impacts him. As I said, the universe sends these people to me to help, so I have several more crazy stories, but I'll save that for later if people are interested. OP is some kind of saint. It would be so easy to just not respond and not get involved in these sorts of things. Instead, OP's out here solving lifelong mysteries like the Mystery Gang. Seriously, huge props to what this OP does. This is incredible stuff. Story 15. I found out my paternal grandfather was not my real grandfather, and that my father was the product of an affair or something else. I found the entire family I'm related to. My last name isn't really accurate, and I was told I was an ethnic group I always thought I never looked like. I think my father's sister knew, just looking back, but that he never did. I found cousins on that side, but sadly, due to my age in my 50s, most relatives had died off. Real grandfather died in 69. This explains why I never met any great uncles or aunts on my father's side of the family. They basically had nothing to do with us. I found evidence in newspaper articles that my grandmother, real, knew, and step/adoptive grandfather's family knew the family I would be related to. They were all from the same town. I am no contact from my family, so no one found out. What is weird is I thought I was adopted for years. I joined Ancestry to find out if I was, and always thought my last name was wrong. Real grandfather was a very busy man. I had relatives all over the place. One grew up in foster care and knew nothing of her real parents. He would have been her real father. Story 16. My friend was adopted through a closed private adoption. Her adopted parents got her an ancestry test for Christmas a few years back. She matched with her birth mom and half-sister and then made contact through Facebook. After trying to get basic family info and medical history, my friend has lots of health problems including cancer, it became clear that her birth mom was keeping secrets. Another friend of my friend did some searching online and found the birth dad, and made contact against my friend's wishes. Turns out the birth mom had slept with her brother-in-law and gotten pregnant. My friend was given up for adoption to hide the secret. It caused some scandal in their family, and my friend no longer talks to them. She did meet her birth dad, and he was a nice guy. Turns out he and his wife wanted to keep my friend, but the mother didn't give him a choice. Well, that's a bit of a spicy secret to end it on, huh? Really though, health issues is the #1 reason why I am in full support of these sorts of DNA tests, especially for adopted children who don't really know their biological parents. It can explain a lot and can really help with treatments too. So yeah, I highly encourage it, even though I know some people are very anti-DNA test because don't give that kind of information to people. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed these stories, and I also hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. I will see you in the next one.